In this next part, we're going to work with numbers. Now we're going to be using the numbers here, number 1 and number 2, and we'll be outputting the text of our numbers or the value of our numbers into these fields, and then we'll be adding these. Instead of using functions or anything like that, we'll just be doing it on the main timeline just like we've done before. So it begins by creating a new section for our numbers. So let's do numbers here. And let's create the variables that we need. Whoops, somehow I got rid of those. So let's put that back. So we'll create our first number, and this will be num1. Now we have three different types of numbers we can use. We can use what's called an int, which is an integer. We can use a unit, or uint, sorry, which is an unassigned integer. Or we can use number. Now, the difference between them is this. A number is anything from negative numbers to positive numbers that includes all the different decimal points that you can have. The assigned integers are those numbers that are negative and positive but are whole numbers. And then the unassigned integers are those that are only positive. So for this case, we're going to be using, it doesn't really matter which numbers that we use, but I'll just go ahead and use the uint, which are all positive numbers. And you can find out more about these by looking at the action script information online. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and make this equal something. So I'll use 24, I guess, doesn't really matter. Then my second one, num2 uint equals 32. And it doesn't really matter what numbers that you have here. Now what I need to do is update the text fields so that it shows what numbers that we have there. So I know that I've got my text fields with their frame labels already, or their labels already, their instance names. So I'll do this dot num1 underscore txt dot text equals whatever that variable is, num1. Now we'll repeat this for num2 just by copying and pasting and changing the numbers. Now we should see that we have our numbers there, 24 and 32. So we've outputted those numbers. Now what we're going to do is add the two numbers together and put them into the total added. So that total added probably exists in here. Total add underscore txt dot text equals num1 plus num2. Now the reason to show this is because when we have something that is an integer and we use the concatenation plus, what it will actually do is recognize that we do have an integer, and instead of instead of concatenating them together like they do with strings, it should add them together. So we should now get a new number here, which is 56. Now let's just assume that we did something wrong, and I'm going to change one of these to a string instead of a number. Let's see what happens now. You'll see now, instead of adding the two numbers together, it's actually concatenated the two numbers together. So we now have 24, 32. So that's a very interesting little issue. That's why strict data typing is so important. The last one we're going to do is subtract the two numbers, total sub, and then we'll subtract the two numbers and see what happens there. So we get our -8. Go ahead and save your work and make sure that you've taken your variables back to being unassigned integers rather than strings so that you don't have that problem. And we'll go on to the next thing.